Over the years, I've tried all kinds of sharpening methods. Some work, some don't, and some are just plain frustrating. In this video, I'll show you how our sharpening system makes it easy to keep the perfect angle and get your planes and chisels razor sharp effortlessly. The solenoid sharpening system is your best friend when it comes to sharp hand tools. Now, I'm not talking about table saw blades. Yeah, they need to be sharp too. I'm talking about chisels and planes, the blades of which you've got to grind to hone them on a honing stone. And you want to get them much, much finer than the grind that comes on the tools when you get them, okay? So to do this, you've got to be able to hold that blade at an exact angle in relation to the stone. And that's what this jig is all about. Now, there are others out there, but there's none I've run across that are as easy to work with as this one. Once you set your blade holder, it's set. You don't have to keep resetting it unless you choose to do so. Others, you have to set it every time you change, say, from a half-inch chisel to a 1-inch chisel. This one, it will stay the same, and you just replace the tool. It's designed with the idea of making the job easy. Okay, it'll hold that blade very consistently, not only consistently in one sharpening session, but from session to session, unless, again, you decide to readjust it. So let's look at how to adjust this properly, and once we get adjusted, how to use it to sharpen our chisels and our planes. A major key to sharpening any blade is angle, maintaining a consistent blade angle. And I'm talking about the angle of the blade to the stone. Okay, if you don't do that, you end up with a consistent sharpening angle or sharp angle on the blade, whether we're talking about a knife or we're talking about a chisel or we're talking about a plane. It really doesn't matter. The solenoid sharpening system excels in holding that angle for us, but we do have to set it up. So how do we set it up? Okay, the saw comes with an Allen wrench, and there are 2 socket head cap screws. They're gold, and those are used to tighten the angle of this platform, which is the carrier for the blade. Okay, now the way I originally started doing this was using a digital angle finder, and that's very, very accurate, and it works well, but it's a little awkward to work with. To use that, you have to get the clamp bar out of the way, set the angle you want. So if I'm going for, say, a 25 degree, okay, that's 25 degrees off of 180. So that's like 145, no, 155 degrees. Oops. Okay, so I can set that on here, set this on the table, bring my blade holder up to it, get that angle, and then tighten it up. And yeah, it works. But like I said, it's a little awkward. I came up with an easier way of doing it, and that is that I cut myself a couple of beveled blocks. And these angles exactly 25 degrees, and this one exactly 30 degrees, as measured by my digital angle finder, okay? This is much, much faster and easier to work with. All I got to do is slide this underneath the blade carrier, and adjust the blade carrier so it's sitting flat on that surface. Then tighten up these 2 screws, and you want to get them as tight as you can. Now, if I need to readjust, for example, I've been doing a basic grind at 25 degrees, and I need to go to 30 degrees, okay, I readjust it. But the nice thing about having these gauge blocks that I created is that it's very easy to come right back. Okay, so where the gauge blocks came from? Well, I took a protractor and a piece of wood, and I measured 30 degrees for this one and 25 degrees for this one, drew a line, cut it on the bandsaw. Now here's your secret to this, okay? Don't try and cut right on the line. Cut just off the line, and then go to a belt sander or even a piece of sandpaper laid out on your workbench and sand it to the line. So that way you're sure you're getting it right where you want it and not maybe a little off. Because, you know, even trying to do a straight cut on a bandsaw, sometimes it's a little crooked. Well, this will help you get it nice and straight. So what this allows me to do is come back and repeatedly get that 25 degrees. And that works much better with this system than anything else I've found. The solenoid sharpening system uses a water stone as opposed to an oil stone. Okay, so what's the difference? Well, it's the lubricant that's used with the stone, and the stone is designed to go with either oil or water. The benefit to a water stone over an oil stone is it cuts a little faster, so you can actually sharpen quicker with a water stone. The disadvantage is you've got to soak the stone in water. As you can see, I've got the stone soaking here in water. Some people don't like water stones because of that need to soak them, but they're really give you a great result. You could also buy your own stones and use this with an oil stone if you prefer, or if you want to go with a diamond plate, it'll work with that as well. Just make sure it's the same size as the stone that's provided with your sharpening system. So my stone has been in here for at least 15 minutes. I know it's well soaked. Okay, no more air bubbles coming out of it. So now I can set it in place, bring the locking bar up tight against it. It doesn't have to be overly tight, but it does need to be snug. We don't want it moving. Okay, so now with this setup, I get my water out of the way, and I can go ahead and sharpen a blade. So I'm going to pull the blade out of this Stanley number 4 here. This is a rather common plane. You do need to remove the chip breaker and the frog, so we're down to just the blade. Okay, so here I've got my blade, and what I want to do is I want to put it into the blade holder, which is this part here, so it is resting, just barely resting on the stone itself. Now, one of the things you want to be careful about here is that you don't get too much pressure, too much downward pressure. Because if you do, it makes it very hard to move the stone. You're better off having a light pressure and gradually bringing your stone down. So I've brought this in. I've made sure it's perpendicular to stone, or parallel to stone, I should say, by using the lines that are ground on here. I've tightened up both these thumb screws, and now I'm ready to sharpen. So it's just a matter of moving it back and forth on the stone. And if you prefer to do this with 2 hands, you can as well. Just move it, changing it this way. That gives you a little more even pressure. You can put pressure on both sides of the stone this way. All right, I can tell looking here that I'm grinding more on this side of the stone than I am here. And I can tell that just by looking at the grindings that are there. So I need to readjust my blade slightly. I don't have it quite straight. And we'll go at it again. Okay, now you can see that I'm getting grinding on both sides. Why not in the middle? This blade was not well ground before. Okay, after some amount of time grinding, you'll want to take your blade out and take a look at it, okay? I'm just going to wipe it off here on this drop cloth. And I can see that I'm getting a consistent grind. I haven't got all the way. Now, this blade, before I started, was not flat. It was kind of curved. Different people had tried sharpening this particular blade and not done a really good job, okay? So it's going to take a bit of grinding to get this one down. Once you've finished with one side, the 400 grit side of your stone, you want to remove it. Maybe wipe off some of the sludge. And we're going to flip it over and go to the 1000 grit side. Essentially, we're doing the same thing again, except for with a finer grit. It's going to give us a finer finish on our blade. We don't have to readjust the angle because it's the same thickness of stone. All we've got to do is slide the blade in there, tighten our clamp up. Yeah, I went a little too low with it. You can always tell when you've gone too low because you can't really move it. There we go. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to rub it across here. Yeah, I still don't have it set quite even. So what this is going to do is give us more of a polished sort of surface, which at the same time means that we're going to have a sharper edge. And that's what we want. The sharper the edge we can get, the better it's going to cut for us, okay? Now your setup comes with a tool-sided stone. It's 400 grit and 1000 grit. At some time in the future, you may want to consider buying, say, a 3000 grit stone to go even up a step further and improve the quality of your cut. Okay, so we've just been dealing with plain blades so far. What about chisels? Let me flip it back over to this side. Honing a chisel is very much like honing a plane. I'm going to grab a 1-inch chisel here. So there's one major difference, and that is that in the middle part of the tool holder here, there is a indentation that is designed to hold the chisel blade. And the reason that's there, more than anything else, is to help you hold the chisel straight, okay? So I'm using it to help me to get my chisel straight. Again, I want it just rubbing on the stone. I don't want to go too hard. Yeah, I went too hard again. Okay. And again, we just run the chisel back and forth on the stone, exact same way as what we had done with the plane blade, okay? So I'm not going to go ahead and spend much time working on this. The one thing I did not mention with the plane blade, which is applicable both to the plane blade and to the chisel, is that after you get done, you want to take your blade and you want to lay it flat on the stone and just rub it back and forth a little bit. You'll probably have a little bit of a burr that raises up on the back side of that. And just that little bit of rubbing will knock that off, okay? Just about the amount that I just did. You don't need to do a lot. You just want to knock that burr off. And with that burr off, you've got the maximum sharpness you're going to get out of your tool.